Hi, welcome back. Always a delight and very unusual opportunity to have Bob just live in the studio. Otherwise, he's kind of in a fiction of our imagination on the tube. Anyway, he's on the West Coast. When do you go home?
I leave tomorrow.
You do?
Back to the Big Apple.
Do you have a car there?
No, you don't need one.
See? The reason I asked that question because I realized this is the only time you drive is when you come back to Oregon.
Yeah,
right?
And it's such fun. Yeah, in Manhattan, you don't need a car. Only the rich have cars.
Okay, so. Yeah. Good to see you. How you doing?
Yeah, good to see you, Perry.
Oh, a lot going on. I know we have a lot to talk about. Let me just ask you one quick current event, and that is, I made the comment earlier today, and I say this respectfully, not to be an alarmist, but I am becoming very concerned about what I'm categorizing as kind of level 4 cancer in our culture with this rise of socialism. There was 4 major midterm elections or primaries yesterday in 4 states. Mm-hmm. And these people are raising their ugly head. They're no longer a secret in the closet. They're just bold out in front. And people are voting for them. And Rush Limbaugh warned of this, the late Rush Limbaugh. And he talked about it and said this will continue to grow and be a serious problem. You're in Manhattan. You're under Mamdani's rule. And he is taking your beautiful city and he is pulling it apart branch by branch. Is this to be worried about, or will it pass?
Well, I think it's to be worried about because it goes to the ignorance of obviously millions of Americans about what American freedom is. I mean, I increasingly, in fact, I'm going to write a column about it at some point soon, but I'm increasingly thinking that we need to think of it this way, Perry. Certain people may be American citizens, but they're not Americans. You think of the famous quote by Ronald Reagan, you can go to France and not, this is a paraphrase, but close. You can go to France and not be French. You can go to Japan and not be Japanese. But if you come to America and you believe in the principles of Americanism, you can be an American. Well, what is the reverse of that? If you don't believe in the principles of America, if you want to abolish the Senate and the presidency and the Supreme Court and abolish borders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, how can you call that an American? You can't. Yes, American citizen, that's a legal question. But we have to start thinking of our country and who these people are. I'm trying to put it in a simple terms because people get caught up in, oh, I want to help you, and we got to have, government-owned grocery stores to help the poor. And we're a big-hearted people, so we easily fall into the lies of socialism. But think of it this way: government cannot love you because love is sacrificial. Mm-hmm. Government doesn't sacrifice itself. Government sacrifices you. It sacrifices the, quote unquote, the rich, which often ends up being the upper middle class, which often ends up being the middle class, and in the end, it's everybody, right? So we need to get over the idea that a political party loves us and therefore wants to give, and take care of us. They don't love us if they don't love America. I mean, we're Americans. If they don't love America, under God, America. That's right, Declaration of Independence. We just celebrated the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and that is liberty under law, under God. It's in our pledge. So these are all things we have to think about in simple terms and not get caught up in the weeds. The one thing we cannot do in this coming election and in future elections is vote our pocketbook. That's a selfish vote. Vote for your country. And that requires giving some serious thought about who and what is your country, and that goes back to what Reagan said.
Beautifully said. One last question. What was it about Mamdani that won the hearts of New Yorkers?
Well, you know, he scooted in with a minority, a small amount of Democrat voters. You know, primaries are tricky. You know, we used to have a system, as you remember well, Perry, where the party picked the candidate. Now, what was the good of that? The good of that, despite the left calling it smoke-filled rooms and secret deals, but the beauty of that was the party was responsible for who it ran for office. If the Democratic Party, you see, right now they can say, oh, well, the people decided, not so, a small percentage of people. But we no longer have parties that are actually responsible for the candidates that are put forward. So you have a lot of trickery going on in the primaries. Mandami has, you know, you look at his eyes are cold. But he has a very warm smile. He has a very appealing manner. He's young, and he's very good at social media. And, you know, he got a lot of minority vote. You know, that's a reality in New York. And he scooted in, you know.
Is there buyer's remorse now?
That, well, I don't know, because the people I rub elbows with wouldn't have voted for him in New York. I mean, no, that's a good question. I think if they're paying attention, again, the problem is, and this goes back to conversations you've had and I've had just over the years, people are not paying attention. I mean, I'm sorry, but the church, capital C, generally speaking, is not paying attention. You know, as one podcaster I like, Nick Freitas, says, do you know what time it is? Well, in New York, we obviously didn't know what time it was when we voted for Mandami, but we just have to think in terms of what they represent. They don't represent America. We're talking about Democrat Socialists of America. They don't represent America.
All right, so let me use that as a jump off and a segue to come back to things we want to talk about, because there is a genuine move among the younger generation today of realizing that they've been lied to. Okay, this is evident more with young men than it is women, and you probably have a reason for that. I know Barna does, but there is a genuine investigation into: is there something else other than what we've been told? Our government's lied to us. I mean, look at COVID now and the exposure, and especially with the Fauci fallout, and how we were lied to and everything else. And you can go on down, you can go down the science, you can go down the medicine, you go down education, you go down all these roads, and young people are saying, you know what, I was told this will make me happy. I tried it, it didn't. You got a lot of young people saying if you transition, that'll make you happy. It doesn't. The Post research shows that all of these things in the end fail. And what's falling through the cracks here is we don't have a generation of men and women that actually know what it is to be a man and to be a woman, because the culture has shaped them to be who they think they should be.
Oh, it's terrible.
And so where does that leave us?
It leaves us with a lot of cynical young people. And that's, I mean, you know, my heart for my podcast launch is to just reach young people and say, you know what, life does make sense. There are things that make sense, things you can do to change your life, step by step by step. Don't let anyone tell you what poverty is. Don't let the left define living standards. You define your own living standards and your own goals. Look, again, you know, Perry, the big picture is there are a lot of people in this country who don't believe in God. And they don't believe the God of the Bible, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so they're upended. I mean, we talk about strict non-believers. The Bible says, so he who says there is no God is a fool. Well, as I've said before, you know, what does that mean? It means, what does they mean by fool? It means you don't understand life. You're the blind. You don't understand, you don't see. And consequently, people like that, you know, the left is that way, and so their government is their God, and they don't serve a right of truth, they serve a right of power. Why? Because power gives them control. Control allows them to help the people, right? That's their rationale. They think completely differently than we do. Mm-hmm. And so getting back to the point, the left, just like Islam, just like the Iran, right? They don't have a problem with lying. It says in their religion, if you're lying for the sake of God, if you're lying for the sake of truth, so lying, they even have a word for it. It's legitimate lying. Well, they lie all the time. Iran lies all the time. Well, there are a lot of people in this country, not just, I'm not just talking about Islam, but which used to be called Mohammedanism, by our forefathers. It's the fact that they are dealing with an entirely different set of principles than we are, which is why I generally, and I'm talking about non-believers, I'm talking about socialists, communists, there are many different labels, but they're operating on an entirely different level. And as I said, they're not essentially American. They're American citizens, most of them, but they're not American, and we have to start to make that differentiation. So for young people listening, you need to understand there are people who believe in truth. There are people who will not lie to you. They may make mistakes, but they believe in truth and they won't lie to you. And there are people who will lie to you for the sake of political power. My party, a trick they played, I was on the air back when Clinton ran for office in 1992. And the whole platform, the whole push, the whole media push of the Democratic Party back then was, the economy is the worst in history. It was a little blip compared to but they were, alarm, the economy. They're doing that now. As you know, there are many factors in the economy that point to a boom coming, right? This is a great country, and I do believe if we trust in the people who tell us the truth, that we are headed for a golden age. But we got the people there, trying to scare you, trying to cause fear, who are saying the economy's a disaster and we're all, starving and whatever. So don't listen to them. That's all I can say. Don't vote your pocketbook. Vote for your country.
Okay. So what's the church's role in this?
To tell the truth. I mean, I'm not a theologian or a pastor, but I think the simplicity of it is tell the truth. Maybe you don't want to get into politics from the pulpit, but you can certainly have meetings after service. You can certainly. When Tim Keller was alive, I gave talks after church, and they put it in the bulletin. The way they described it in the bulletin is, Christian talk show host leads discussion on how to love your neighbor when they bring up politics. And so I would engage in a conversation about certain political issues on the basis of what is truth, number one. And number two, my primary message is, if you're trying to reach your neighbor for Christ, it's more important to win the person than the argument, right? You're a Christian. Don't get angry, don't get frustrated, just, but stand on truth, right? Well, as I say, a church may not, for whatever reason, may not feel that speaking that from the pulpit is right, but they can certainly have meetings after church that they bless and that engage in certain key political issues and weigh both sides and help educate people.
Let me take a quick break here. We come back. I know that the other part of your heart here is young people, young men. We have to rescue. I've often said, if George Barna's research is correct, and it is, and young men are starting to investigate faith and they're coming into the church, are we prepared to receive them? Or are we trying to skin them and clean them before they enter?
What a thought.
All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Bob Justice in the house before he returns back to the Big Apple, where he takes a big chunk out of it every time he's there. And he heads up Concerned Families. You can go to Concerned Families. Is a website. He's also bobjust.com. And maybe sometimes you pick up some of his writings there for Fox News and the American Thinker and World Net Daily, so he's a pretty active guy.
Thank you, Barry.
I want to come back to, I know it's a subject of your heart, and it is mine too. I'm trying to figure out in my mind and my thinking, if there is a genuine hunger among young men, how do we seize this moment?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question, Perry. You know, I was mentioning off the air that I met with the Concerned Fathers Against Crime board last night, and they decided to relaunch patrols. You know, since COVID really knocked us out of the box. We had to relaunch Birthday, which they did last spring, and next year we hope to get all 4 of the Josephine County high schools and possibly Rogue River High School. So Birthday's moving again. Well, they decided last night to relaunch CFAC patrols, and guess what their primary mission is, aside from standing with law enforcement and trying to, you know, prevent crime. Their mission is to let's reach the young men. Let's get the young men on patrol with older wisdom men and just pour into them. And let's get the boys and fathers and sons patrol and church sons, you know, single mother sons, get them on. So let's just fortify the young men. So that just, you know, to put a practical action point to it. So I'm thrilled that they decided, and they're excited about it too. You know, I think the big problem now is boys and young men don't know who they are. They're treated with hostility by the media and the culture in general, especially white young men, but all men. You know, it's an anti-male spirit, as we've talked about over the years. And so the question I would ask for people to think about is, if you go to the average young woman or girl and say, what makes women special? I think they'll, with not much thought, I think they'll say, well, we bear children. We can bear children. We bring babies into the world. I mean, what an incredible thing. Well, what if you ask that question of boys? What would their answer be? I remember one time challenging a feminist leftist, Gloria Allred, on that at a conference back in Washington, you know, and she had no answer for it. What makes boys special? Well, the answer, biblically speaking, is leadership. Leadership. So look, I made a list. You know, I gave a seminar in Spain that rooted off a seminar I did Edgewater Christian Fellowship in Grand Sebastien was very kind to give me their chapel to lead a discussion there, and we videotaped it, and some people from a church in Spain saw it, and they invited me to come and speak, which I did last April. And when I was there, a couple of days before the seminar, I got inspired to write a list. Just go through Genesis 2. And by the way, you can get the video that I did at Edgewater, Gen 2, number 2, gen2project.org, that's as in Genesis 2. And so I got inspired before the seminar to say, just go through Genesis 2 and say, Adam experienced this and Eve experienced this. And I went through that. Well, the senior pastor who was there for the whole seminar, I read it to the men alone and the women alone. The senior pastor came running up to me and said, that list, I've got to have that list. Apparently, the reaction I've got, I've run it by a few pastors, but the reaction I've got is there's something different than reading it when you write the list like this. And I'm reading it now for a reason. I want young men and mothers of young men and fathers of young men and boys to perhaps use this to make clear to their sons, you are uniquely different from women in a powerful and wonderful way, just as women are uniquely different from men in a powerful and wonderful way. And the two are what create family and children and the future and eternity, right? So listen to this, Perry. Number one, Adam is formed from dust of the ground. Eve is made from Adam. Now, try not to draw any conclusions from this except to understand that you have these two creatures that are very different for God's purpose, both beautiful, both blessed, both essential, but different, okay? So one, Adam is formed from the dust, Eve is made from Adam. God breathes life into Adam. Eve is created already alive and breathing. Adam is created alone in relationship to God. Eve is created by God in relationship to Adam. 4, Adam saw the garden being created out of the ground. Eve came into an already created garden to see it in all its completed splendor. Adam is placed into the world alone, responsible to tend and keep it. Eve comes into the world responsible in relationship to Adam. Adam discovers the reality of death from God's one command, learning also that death is the penalty for disobedience. We don't see Eve learn this directly. 7, Adam learns that it is not good to be alone, and then sees animals being created for him as possible companions. Eve is never alone and knows only Adam. 8, Adam names the animals but rejects them as companions. Eve knows Adam as her only companion choice. Adam knows loneliness and the lack of Eve. Eve knows only a loving connection to Adam. Adam joyfully accepts and anoints Eve, blessing her and naming her. Eve silently receives Adam's blessing and his name, and marriage is created. 11, Adam is made directly for God's creation. Eve is made directly for Adam. Now here's 12. 12 makes it clear how honored women are. 12, Eve is God's love expressed to Adam. Eve is God's love expressed to Adam. She is God's greatest gift, a treasure with purpose, the brilliant crown of God's creation. Adam is overwhelmed and proclaims what God's love has made, a miraculous blessing that Adam knows will change his life forever. Yet he doesn't speak directly or personally to his new wife. He speaks over her. Eve remains mysteriously silent, but since she was created for this moment, we can be sure she takes a joy in it that surprises and even overwhelms her. And of course, the next moment is into Genesis 3, when the serpent speaks directly and personally to Eve, and we have the fall. So you can read this, of course, go to Genesis 2 and read Genesis 2. But if this list, I will eventually post this on gen2project.org. I want to write a column. I've already talked to WorldNet Daily about writing a column with this list, but a little more explanation. You know, women, sometimes women are frustrated because men are so different. Men just handle situations differently than women. And I remember one time I was watching The View. Don't watch it regularly. I was skipping the channels and I saw it. This is in the early days of The View. And one of the guests on the show was talking about men. And she said, "Don't you love that stare?" I promise you, I heard this, Perry. I wish I had the video. She said, "Men have that stare, and it's like they see right through you." And she was just talking about how much she honored, how much she was comforted by that, which is so interesting. The other women thought she was crazy. But I remember thinking, yes, of course, because men are different. We handle loneliness differently. We are not as social as women. Women walk down the street in New York holding hands. I'm talking heterosexual women, just friends, arm in arm, link arm. Men don't do that. We just don't do that. We're not as naturally, beautifully, and wonderfully social as women are. They're such a gift to the world, women. But I say this to men, and young men especially, and boys. You are marvelously different. You are created as protectors and providers. You are created sober. You have a different relationship to the world. When I speak, many times, Perry, I speak to older women especially who have the wisdom, and I say, do you think the men in your life, do you think men in general understand how vulnerable you feel as a woman, how generally vulnerable? And they all say no. Mm-hmm. Men don't feel that vulnerability. You think of this list. Men are created in relationship to the world. We look at the world, it doesn't intimidate us. We look at the world and it's for us to have dominion over. Women respond differently.
We're going to run out of time. One thing that concerns me, and this is beautiful, Bob.
Thank you.
Is that the culture, media and entertainment have demasculized men. So men don't have a masculine mentor or image.
They have demasculized men, and they have masculized women. In other words, our enemy, our real enemy, Satan, the demonic influences in the world, the battle in the world, which is so beautifully described in the book Waking the Dead, they hate the image of God. We are created man, woman in the image of God, and that image they hate.
All right, bobjust.com is the website. You can go to gen2.com. A couple of websites.
Gen2project.org.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, well, hey, what do I know? I just sit in this chair. gen2project.org.
Thank you.
So you got a couple of websites, bobjust.com, and check it out. Thank you, Bob. Safe travels going home.
Thank you.
I would say massage that list, turn it into an article.
Thank you, sir.
Turn it into a book. You're an author. You're a writer.
Thank you,
okay,
sir.
then I can interview you again. Bob
right.
Just, the author. All right, we'll see you next time on
Thank you,
Focus
Barry.
Today.
Thank you.